Have you ever felt like you're talking, but your partner isn't really listening? Or maybe you've wondered, why is it so hard to share my deepest thoughts and feelings with my partner? Or you could even be asking yourself, why does my partner feel the way they do? Well, Maya Angelou once said that people will forget what you said. Some people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Welcome to Heartfelt Connections podcast. I'm your host, Janet Adetunji, your relationship, sex, and intimacy coach, guiding you on this journey through the twists and turns of love, marriage, and meaningful connections centered on faith. Some people think intimacy is all about sex, and sex is intimacy, but intimacy is so much more than just the physical. There are several types of intimacy. I've heard so many people say 4 types, 10, 12, but in my opinion, most of them can be lumped into 4 types of intimacy. We have the spiritual, the physical, or you can call it the sexual, the intellectual, and emotional. So we're going to be deep diving into each of these types in no particular order of priority during our Deepening Intimacy series. So in today's episode of Deepening Intimacy, we're going to be talking about how do we build emotional intimacy. We're going to explore the power of emotional connections in our relationship, discuss what emotional intimacy truly means, why is it important, what can hinder it from growing, and then discover ways to strengthen it. My goal is to guide you to creating lasting bonds with your partner. Emotional intimacy forms the foundation of a very strong, healthy relationship. So let's start by defining it. I would define emotional intimacy as a deep connection and closeness in which you and your spouse feels loved, respected, trusted, safe, understood, and accepted. It involves the ability to be open, vulnerable, for you to be honest and authentic, allowing each other just to express your true self. Because when you do that, you build the trust needed to bond with your partner on a deeper level. I would say emotional intimacy does not happen overnight. It takes time, it takes work, it takes nurturing and commitment from both partners to help develop a deep understanding, empathy, and an acceptance of your partner's true self. So you don't require touch or sex to activate or maintain emotional intimacy, because it's based on your feelings. So if you want to experience emotional intimacy, you have to surrender yourself to you so you feel comfortable and complete. And then you surrender to each other and complement each other's soul. It is a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing to have emotional intimacy. So let's talk about what some hindrances could be to building emotional intimacy. One is the fear of vulnerability. So a lot of people fear being emotionally vulnerable, maybe due to past experiences or when they've been hurt. But that fear keeps preventing them from opening up or sharing their thoughts or their feelings. Another hindrance could be communication issues. Like if you lack listening skills, or you get very defensive, or the way you respond, you do not validate your spouse, it can hinder emotional intimacy. If there is trust issues also, which trust is very essential to building emotional intimacy, it could really put a dent in it, because trust issues can also stem from past betrayals or insecurities. The other thing that could hinder emotional intimacy is emotional baggage, right? We all have our emotional baggage and unresolved emotional issues in the past. right? And they just linger. And because of that unresolved trauma, it can create barriers to intimacy. And that's not what we want. Another hindrance could be unspoken or mismatched expectations. So when you have differences in expectations about anything, it could lead to frustration and disconnection. One other is conflict avoidance. So when you avoid conflict in a relationship, it will hinder you from strengthening that emotional bond that you should have. Because at the end of the day, it's going to just keep piling up, and then resentment upon resentment is going to just step into the relationship. And finally, I would say that stress and life demand, right? If you think about all the external stressors that we have, work pressure, financial worries, family responsibilities, all of those distract you from quality time with your partner. And at the end of the day, it also kind of, you know, cuts through on your emotional intimacy. So, with all of this being said, where do we start from? How do we build emotional intimacy? I'm going to start from key aspects and elements of emotional intimacy, starting with trust. Emotional intimacy requires a foundation of trust because when partners trust each other, they feel safe to be themselves and they feel secured in expressing their true self. Now, trust cannot be demanded, it is earned. It is developed over time through consistent communication, honesty, and being reliable. Which brings me to the next aspect of emotional intimacy, open communication. I would say not just any kind of communication, but an open, honest, effective communication, because that is very essential. And this also includes active listening and empathy. When couples feel safe to express their true thoughts and their feelings without fear of judgment or rejection, it just helps foster a deeper understanding and empathy between them. And in turn, it deepens their emotional bond. Another thing you should think about when thinking of how to build emotional intimacy, it's the vulnerability and authenticity. You have to be open. You have to be honest about your feelings, about fears, past trauma, and any insecurities. I'll tell you, this is a hard one. Even for me, it's a hard one because this could open old wounds or deeply rooted pains. And depending on how the receiving partner responds, it could significantly strengthen or break the emotional bond entirely. So, this is an advice to the listening partner. You need to be mindful of your response. When your partner gets very vulnerable with you and shares, you have to emotionally support. It has to be a judgment-free zone. Being vulnerable and trusting your partner goes hand in hand to deepening emotional connections. So when couples are brave enough to share their feelings with each other and trust that vulnerabilities will be met with compassion, understanding, and support, it creates a sense of closeness and safety and acceptance. And that just allows for a deeper level of trust and connection because your partner sees and accepts you for who you truly are. So here's a tip. If you're someone who struggles expressing your feelings, you can begin by opening up some of your defenses and just opening your heart. And just start from there. it really, really will build your connection. Another thing you want to think about is empathy and understanding. Being receptive to each other's emotions and experiences can be tough. It requires a high level of EQ. But taking the step to empathize and understand the other person's perspective, even if it differs from your own, can help build your connection. Something else that you could also try is making sure that you navigate the challenges together. And it is inevitable that challenges and conflicts will arise in your relationship. You can't stop it. When you have couples that have established the foundation of trust and emotional vulnerability, they're better equipped to navigate the challenges that come their way. And believe me, they will come. But putting to practice some of the things that we've talked about, like trust and safety, open and honest communication, practicing active listening, empathy and understanding, being vulnerable and authentic. All of this will help build that foundation. So during challenges, you can communicate openly, support each other through the difficult time, offer each other reassurance, and provide that emotional support and validation. And just work with each other to find solutions. So, as we wrap up today's episode, remember this: emotional intimacy isn't built overnight. It is not an easy task. It takes time, it takes effort, and your willingness to trust and be vulnerable with your partner. But the benefit of building emotional intimacies, they are immeasurable. Think of a deeper connection, a stronger bond, a relationship filled with love and understanding. So take steps towards building emotional intimacy. You can start by scheduling regular check ins to discuss feelings, your concerns, and trusting that your partner will do the same. Practice empathy through active listening to your partner's perspective without judgment. Share experiences and your memories, because once you do that, it helps create also a sense of shared history and intimacy. Schedule date nights. Engage in activities that promote bonding, such as taking a cooking class together, or taking a walk, or just exercising together. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on future episodes. And share this podcast with those you care about. Your thoughts and questions are like treasures to me, so don't be shy. Drop a message on our social media handle at Intimacy Awakening. Share your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. So you can also share topics you would like us to explore in future episodes. Join us next time as we explore ways to nurture physical and sexual intimacy in your marriage. Until then, keep loving deeply, communicating, stay true to yourself, and make your relationships be filled with joy, growth, and a beautiful harmony of two unique hearts. I'm your host, Janet Adetunji. Thanks for tuning in.